Hello and welcome back to another video on NoCode.Tech, and in this one I'm going to be showing you how you can build your own version of Twitter in one of my favourite mobile app builders called Adalo. Now I've thrown together this quick demo already just to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to be building. We'll be building some of the core Twitter functionality that you're used to seeing. For example, the ability to scroll through different tweets, the ability to retweet a tweet, to favourite a tweet, and then we'll also have some additional functions on there like the ability to search. We'll look at mentions, we'll look at the explore page as well. Now clearly this isn't going to be an exact copy of Twitter, but it does give you an idea of some of the capabilities that you can put together in an app builder like Adalo. And if you're not building your own version of Twitter, what you will learn from this is how to do things like showing a list of user generated content, favouriting an item, unfavouriting an item, searching through lists on Adalo, and lots more on top of that as well. So we're going to start by going in and creating our own version of our app. And immediately what I've got here is a choice between, do I want to make a native mobile app, i.e. one that can show up on Google Play or the App Store, or do I want to make a desktop web app that you can navigate to here in Chrome? I'm going to stick to native mobile app for now, although clearly you can pick whichever one you like. I'm going to, instead of picking a template, I'm going to go with blank. And right here it's going to ask me for the name of my app. Of course I'm going to call that Twitter. And as you might have seen before, if you've used Adalo or watched our basics of Adalo video, it's going to ask me for a primary and secondary colour. Now I can change these at any point within the app, but this just makes it a little bit quicker to build an app that's on brand. I've already went and looked up the hex code for the two, the primary and the secondary colours of Twitter. So I'll just plug those in right now. And clearly those are going to be pretty recognisable, but at any point if you're building your own app, I always recommend this tool here called Coolors, or Colours, however you want to pronounce it. And essentially when you come on here, you can just keep hitting spacebar to get a new colour palette each time. And you can see the little hex codes show up here. You can just copy and paste them into whatever tool you're building with. Anyway, we'll go ahead and create. And as we load in here, immediately Adalo is going to create the sign in, login and home pages for us. Now obviously we want to get them looking a little bit different. But before we do that, we're going to start where any good app does and have a look at the database on the left here. So by default, I've got our users database collection. I'm also going to create a new collection called tweets. And if we think about the sort of main components that we need in a tweet, well, first of all, we're going to need to know who has, or actually before that, we're going to need to know what the actual tweet is. What did the person write? So under the tweets, we'll put tweet, and that will be the actual text of the tweet. We're then going to have to create a relationship with the user who actually made the tweet. So who is the person that made the tweet? Well, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to do relationship with users. And immediately I've got this screen. If you've done our No Code Fundamentals course, then you'll be really familiar with this picture because it's the one that we use to kind of demonstrate, one-to-many, many-to-many relationships, etc. If you haven't looked at the introduction to No Code Fundamentals, or you haven't watched our Basics of Adalo series, highly recommend checking both of those out first because that's going to give you a lot of the knowledge and terminology that I'm using here in this video. But of course, we say this out loud, well, a user can make multiple tweets, that sounds correct, but each tweet belongs to only one person. That's the correct relationship we're looking for, so let's hit done. And I'm going to call this tweeter. Save that. And if I go into my users database, you'll see a corresponding relationship has been created by tweets. I'm just going to call that my tweets, just so that I can differentiate the name, because let me show you what happens when I go in here and create another property. So we're also going to need to make a note of how many retweets this particular tweet has had, but rather than save that as a number and say, well, it's had 5 retweets or 10 retweets, instead what we're going to do is simply create a relationship again with users. Now remember, there might be one user who tweets the tweet, but that same user can also go and retweet other tweets, they can like other tweets, they can do whatever they like. And so we're going to have multiple relationships between the tweets database and the users database. So we'll hit users again. And again, what we're doing here is we're saying this is going to be for retweets. So in that case, a tweet really can have multiple people retweeting it. So a tweet can have multiple users. Similarly, a user can retweet multiple tweets. So as a result, a user can have multiple tweets. So I'll hit done there, and we'll call this retweets. Actually, sorry, give that a slightly more descriptive name. We'll call that retweeters, just to be absolutely clear. It's the people who retweeted it. And if I pop in here, you'll see I've had another field created here called tweets, which is why I'm going through and just changing them at the same time. Otherwise, I'll end up with 3 different fields here called tweets, and I won't know, which one is which. So we'll call this retweeters as well, or retweet, sorry, we'll call that. So within my users, I now know all the tweets that I've made. I now know everything I've retweeted. And then if I pop into tweets one more time, you can hear my mouth is almost whistling when I'm saying tweet so much. Create one more relationship, this time for likes. So who's liked a tweet? Well, again, a tweet could have multiple people liking it or favoriting it. Similarly, a user can have or can favorite multiple tweets. So we'll pick that last one and we'll call this one, call it likers. And if I pop back to my users database, I've got that here, it's called tweets at the minute, but I'll just rename that to likes. So again, whenever I'm creating the relationship field here in the tweets database, it's just making, almost the other side of that relationship. That's why it's adding this relationship in by default called tweets. It's just adding that in for me, so I don't have to go and create a relationship from both sides. And now I've got that. And so for each tweet, we now know what the tweet was. We now know who tweeted it. We now know who's retweeted it, and of course we've got somewhere to store who's liked it as well. Similarly, on the user's front, we know the user's email, their tweets, etc. What tweets they've retweeted and what tweets they've liked. And we've got a couple more details we're going to add here. So we've got username. We could change that to handle. And that's just going to be the sort of name that's, like at John Smith, at Twitter user, that little kind of at symbol that you get in between an email address. Obviously, that's really common on Twitter. And there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could make sure that the at symbol is part of whatever gets saved into the database. You could use it as a form validation, so that when a user's typing in their handle, it has to have an at in front of it. We're just going to add it manually throughout the app, and I'll show you what I mean. But one thing you're going to notice as we go through here, especially if you've got any no-code experience at all, there is always more than one way to do anything that you want to do. Now, the last thing I'm going to do, I've got this thing here that says tweets name. So for every collection in our Adalo database, we need some kind of way to uniquely identify a row. Instead of using name though, I'm going to use the term ID. And we'll look at how we can set IDs a little bit later in the videos. So at this point, our tweets are all set up, ready to go. We've also got our users set up and ready to go, but there's one last change we need to make here. And if we're going to have followers and following, we're going to have to create a couple more relationships. So really, I can create a relationship between users and other users. So I could create one here that says, we're going to say in this particular instance, we've got a list of people who are followers. So we're going to say a user can have multiple users and a user can have multiple users. It sounds a little bit confusing, but essentially what we're saying there is, if we have a follower and following relationship, then you can follow as many people as you like and be followed by as many people as you like. So I'm going to create that in there, create that followers. Now that might not make a huge amount of sense, but I think as we go into it and practice, you'll start to see what I mean. If I do another one there, following. Now you might ask, why have I made 2 separate relationships for followers and following? Well, the reason for that is simply because I could be following as many people as I like, and someone else can follow as many people as they like, but it doesn't mean we're necessarily following each other. And so by having both, we can count both the followers and the following. Now, you could argue there's multiple ways to set this relationship up. You could do it by having an individual follower. Does this person follow this other person, yes or no? But I like my method. I think it works the best. So at this point, we've now set up our database. We're more or less kind of ready to go. What we'll do is we'll pop into the next video and we will set up our user interface.